We'll get started in just a few minutes. Did you guys get your photos from Photo Day? Yes. Did you do the photo day?
I did not.
Did you do the photo day, Francis?
The photo day.
Remember we had, a couple weeks ago, we had photos you could sign up for photos. You didn't do that? Yeah. Martha, did you?
Would they turn out?
I had about 3 that I would use. What about you, Amanda? What? I gotta look at them again. I hustled through and I was like, we'll see.
And then someone points a camera at me, I just
I
look
know.
like I'm in pain.
I'm like, what is with that face
Yeah,
I'm making?
yeah, right. And
I like
is that my face that
personality
other
poses
people?
and stuff.
Yes. Yeah, they were inside a house. Tyson John have a condo that was staged, so you got to go in and do all these different things. The only ones that I felt looked like me were the ones where I was just like sitting at the computer or working
Same.
or whatever. The others I look like I'm like
Yeah.
frozen in time.
I think it was
kinda.
the lighting kind of, maybe,
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah,
yeah.
they were just
I'm thinking
different.
same as you. Oh,
They were just different. Okay, guys, well, we'll go ahead and get started. How does this sound, Alex? How many people do we have online? Okay, excellent. Everybody online hear me okay? I was just asking if everybody online can hear. No,
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, good morning to all. Okay, so we're going to start today with our ninja action tip, okay, why reaching out feels harder than it should be. We're not going to start that quite yet, but what I want you to remember, this is a very busy time of year right now where things are really starting to pick up. We've talked a lot about making phone calls. It was a few of our lessons in the months prior. I'm still going to push it, okay? If you haven't noticed for about the last 6 months, we've talked a lot about making phone calls and connecting to people, okay? It is a common and reoccurring theme for a reason, because making those personal connections is what gets this business done, okay? So the choices you make each day, how you spend your time, who you spend your time connecting with, the energy you put into some of these activities, they will definitely shape your business. So we're going to focus again on reaching out, why it feels harder than it should be, just remembering the reasons why somebody would choose you. That's for your authenticity, okay? The idea that you are interested in them. You don't have to be interesting. You just have to be somebody that they can know, trust, and love. Focus on being genuine and courteous, okay? And curious about what their life is all about. So we'll start with that ninja principle, and then we'll take it from there in just a little bit.
Good day, ninjas. This is Peter Parnig with your weekly ninja action tip. You know, nothing in the Ninja 9 is really difficult if you take a look at it. Nothing about calling up someone and asking them how their life is should be difficult. But for a lot of us, it is. Why? Recently at an installation, a ninja who is relatively new to the business and I were talking at a lunch, and she said, you know, I don't know why anybody would use me. I'm not a seasoned veteran that everybody knows. I don't have a big reputation. And I had spent a couple of days in the room with her and listening to her, and I noticed she had really lovely energy. She was sincere and calm and smiled and just made me feel safe being around her. In ninja terms, she had a great vibe. As we were talking, it became clear that somewhere along the way she had created a belief that she wasn't special, that she was just ordinary and therefore not worthy of being selected professionally, especially in light of her newness in the business. With a little digging, we discovered that her parental messaging was that she was only as valuable as whatever her success was. Put differently, she didn't feel intrinsically valuable as just a human being. Now, I know in my experience that many, if not most humans, feel that way. We have underlying doubts about our self-worth. Parental messaging, childhood traumas, and more leave us feeling that we just aren't good enough. And it doesn't matter where the beliefs originate. For most, they're just there, kind of lying in wait. When it comes to reaching out to people and initiating a forward conversation, if our underlying subconscious belief is that we aren't valuable, our programming, that feeling can bring any effort to make those connections to a screeching halt. And then we feel even worse about ourselves because we can't even bring ourselves to have a conversation about someone else. And it really can kind of like pile on. So here's the solution. Most people crave deeply to be seen and heard. I told her that if she would just share her natural energy, she has great energy, her natural kindness and her sense of caring, her kind smile, instead of worrying that she had to prove her value by knowing a lot about real estate, people would instantly respond and be attracted to her. And she asked, well, how do I do that? And I said, well, by asking questions. Be interested, not interesting. What kind of questions? Forward questions. Questions about what matters to people. I suggested the key is to learn to listen deeply. Learn to follow the rule that our next question is embedded in the last answer. When people feel seen and heard, they want to do business with you. They want to be around you. Let's remember the law of authenticity from the Go-Giver. The most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself, just who you are. Now, there's an old marketing slogan, actually from another real estate company, from a real estate company that said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. This week, pick 5 people you haven't talked to in a year, just anybody, and talk to them, forward them. Find out what's important to them, show them that you care, and business will take care of itself. Thank you, and let's have a great week.
I have this handout for you as well. We won't go through every single detail on this handout. This is just a coaching tool for you. We talked, and the video talked about the things that are at the top of this page. When you get into the middle section, on the next 2 pages, there are some sample forward questions that you might ask. Some of them are just very generic. What I would suggest that you do, if you write down the list of 5 people that you're thinking about calling, I would start doing a little bit of research about who you're calling. Okay? Maybe try to determine what's happening in their lives, whether you're using social media or you've heard from a friend or a neighbor what's going on with them. But do a little bit of homework so that you can make some genuine connections during that time, and then those prompts that are on that page won't feel so generic. Okay? But tailor them a little bit to the person that you're going to call. And then the last part of this handout, from page 2 to page 3, is actually setting your connection plan this week. You know, I find if I actually set the plan and am intentional about writing those things down and saying, here's what I'm going to do this day, that day, and the next, then I actually follow through. If I just think it's a good idea, forget about it. I'm not getting to it. Okay? But keep it simple, keep it intentional, and focus on that connection over the next conversation. So for today, reach out to 2 past clients or sphere contacts, and your goal is to reconnect. Ask them 1 to 2 meaningful questions about their lives or themselves or their happenings. Prep your call by creating those 2 meaningful questions that might apply to them. And do that today. Maybe this morning you do a little bit of your research. This afternoon, lunchtime, through the evening, you make those phone calls. Okay? Then there's a plan for Wednesday and Friday to reach out to 2 people you haven't talked to in a while. An easy starter is, I've had you on my mind. And then Friday, reach out to 1 newer connection, maybe somebody you met online, somebody that has come to you as a referral, and learn their story and what's next for them. Maybe you're framing those questions, just tell me about yourself, okay? And then we challenge you to send follow-up. Go ahead and create a calendar for yourself as to when you're going to follow up with those folks. And when you're getting off the phone with them, it's always nice to remember to say, may I reach out to you in a few weeks? I enjoyed talking to you. Or may I touch base with you next month once you decide, when you're ready to start looking, or whatever it might be. But set those dates and times for yourself for your next phone call or meetup. Okay? All right, let's talk about business. What's been happening in people's businesses right now? What you guys have cooking? Anything anybody wants to share? What you're seeing? Martha's got a good one. What's happening at one of your houses right now, Martha?
Several showings. We had 5 people at open house yesterday. The last open house I had 4 or 5.
Uh-huh.
But the house does not have any doors on the bathrooms. So it's hard to explain.
People want to.
I'm like, it must have been a thing in the 90s. It's kind of got the walls that only go 3/4 the way. Don't. Good morning.
Yeah.
Close off the room completely.
Yeah.
So
what's the solution? Are they framed for doors? Or there's
the
no
one
frame?
downstairs, I think we could put a barn door on. Good, but the one upstairs is at an angle from to the closet. So we haven't figured out. Now I got you bring an architect or somebody in to see how to. But I also don't know that my client will be anyone.
You know, so Martha and I were talking through some staging opportunities and what to do about this because everybody's got the same comment and the property is about 1,800 square feet. So I suggest in this case, maybe some virtual staging of those things. And I would probably make mention or suggestion under the photos as to what could go there. Like if that is a great spot for a sliding barn door, maybe underneath that photo that's staged, say, a sliding barn door would be perfect for this area, fuel some of those thoughts a little bit. You have any suggestions for that, John?
I'm just trying to visualize it. I mean, there's
Yeah,
no
I can
walls.
see that.
There's no
Yeah.
walls in the bedroom. I mean, the bedroom is not totally private.
No,
I've actually bought a house like that before I ended up using barn doors that I built myself.
Yeah.
So like I did a custom and it worked out great. The house sold in 2 days.
Yeah.
So
Because Martha has one, this price point is fantastic. However, it's a holdup.
that's right. This is the bedroom. This is the closet, and there's the wall that doesn't go all the way up. That's the vanity sink right behind there. There's the shower curtain.
We're good.
Okay. Martha, for those folks that are online, can you share with us the address on that?
4352 Cobblestone Knoll.
4352 Cobblestone Knoll. So first of all, take a look at that property, see if you might have a buyer for it, and if you have any suggestions from Martha on how we frame up those bathroom doors.
Sink's right behind the
She's
wall.
looking for it.
There's the shower. See how the wall doesn't go all the way up? And there's no door here between us.
It's a really attractive house. I mean, I think
Have you seen-
the, yes, I think the bathroom door solution.
This at an angle, so it's not
Yeah.
straight across. There's the wall. That wall.
Interesting. Okay, anybody else?
3 bedroom, 3 bath,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Yeah.
3 full.
Anybody else have anything they want to share about their business and what's going on? I will tell you, we're seeing tons of multiple offers. So go in prepared with your buyers or your sellers for the fact that you are going to potentially be in a multiple offer situation and how you're going to handle that. Because that is happening. It's happening on all price points and it's back. Escalation clauses. We've had a lot of folks ask us about escalation clauses. Remember that things escalate typically based on the escalation sheet. They escalate typically in increments, okay? With a cutoff point. If you've written that, I would suggest if you're writing for your buyer, if you're writing an escalation clause, that you write it in increments with a cap on it. But remember, if you're the seller or the seller agent and you decide to take an escalation clause, you have to show the other offer that you are escalating. Okay, now typically how we do that is just to mark out any very important or personal information, maybe a strike through on the name or just copy the first page. But you are to escalate, if you escalate, you are to show your cards with the other offer. So if you have any questions about that, we're here if you're getting into a multiple offer situation to help you frame your best offer or write your best offer, because it there's a lot of pressure. We're seeing folks week after week saying, I've lost out on my second, third, fourth one. So we're here to help you to write that offer and get it done. Okay, I had an interesting one that came up, and I'll talk about this real quick and be thinking of yours. I have a seller, property that's being sold. It's been under contract for a long time. And the buyer has multiple bank accounts. And the bank account that the earnest money deposit came out of was a bank account that they probably didn't want to use or be verified. So when you're coaching your folks on writing their earnest money deposits, or where is the money going to come from when they put down their down payment, I would probably talk a little bit lightly about those bank accounts. And it's just another reminder that those things happen. And now we're in underwriting holdup because they used a commingled account of funds, and it's messy. Okay, all their down payment is coming from one verified account, but they wrote their earnest money from a messy account. Okay, so it's hard to talk to people about their finances, but as a buyer agent, I would make sure that we put that on the list of coaching opportunities, so to speak. Sean, is there anything you want to share with the
I do want to share
World
just something
Veterans?
real quick. I don't know how many people were at the lunch and learn last week with the folks that were doing the crawl space repairs. And I just wanted to bring up just real quick about home services insurance. What we put on all of our policies, which is not typical of homeowner policies, is backup sewer drain sump pump failure coverage. And a lot of folks are not really aware that that is not automatically covered on your homeowner policy. That is actually not covered. It's an endorsement that you add to the policy. Depending on the company that you go with, it's between $60 and $100 a year for that. And we add that to every policy. And if I have a customer that says, I don't want that on my policy, I don't want to pay for that, we don't write the policy. So our company is very strongly, they feel very strongly about that endorsement. That if you don't have that, the relatively minor cost for a major repair. Since I've been doing that, I've had 4 claims under that of water sewer backup, and not one of them was less than $10,000 for $60. And we also, I personally don't put this on every policy, but in homes built prior to 1980, I recommend buried utility line coverage, which is again around $50 or $60 a year, and that covers anything that's buried. So if your sewer line fails between the house and the road and backs up into the house, you get the backup coverage, and then if they've got to dig up that sewer pipe and replace it because it's collapsed or busted, that's covered as well. So those are things that to think about when you're thinking about there's water in the crawl space or those things come up. You guys do have a resource that can say, hey, even if they don't go with me, that's an endorsement you can bring up and say, make sure you mention to your insurance agent that the backup of sewer is covered. Relatively minor, and then you look like the expert to your client. Hey, this is an older house, this is, make sure you get some coverage for your sewer backup. And you can even tell them it's between $60 and $100 a year. That I can verify, depending on the company. It's never more than $100 a year. Unless you go higher than 25 grand. So it's well worth a conversation. I always have that conversation with my clients. They know what's on there, they know what they're paying for, what it covers. But going back to just how often that gentleman said they're working underneath houses. For water and stuff that's backed up, it's a regular occurrence and it's not normally covered. So I just wanted to give you that little piece of info.
Really smart
with you.
For sure. Okay, well, here's what we're gonna do. Protect Environmental is gonna be here in a few minutes, and they're gonna be setting up to give us a presentation, but provided lunch today from McAllister's. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys grab your lunch. And is there anything else that you guys have in your mind that you want to talk about before we jump into their thing? Okay, so we'll go ahead, and if you guys want to grab your lunch, then we can just be ready for them when you get.
It's like, that's harder when you're a girl dad. Yeah, 'cause they know what buttons. There's.
Chinese guest or agent? I'm sorry.
Agent.
I just did not like you might be able to, you're probably fine.
Oh.
I just, a screen time of this, so.
All right, I'll put it back.
Thank you. We were on the set.
Yeah, those will be. Where it should go. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, get pushing lunch in the hallway there.
Thank you. Check.
Yeah, we have our folks back online. You guys ready to get started?
Okay, well, for those of you who are online and in person, we have Protect Environmental, one of our trusted partners with us here today. They're gonna introduce themselves and share with you what they have to offer, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Hopefully you guys can hear us, see us okay online. Thank you so much for being in person. It's so awesome having to do that nowadays. I guess first, we're something like environmental, we're an environmental service company. We specialize in radon. Which I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, but we'll go through a lot of it. So much. We have some fabulous tech people. So hopefully you guys can hear us a little bit better. Like I said, we're an environmental service company, specializing in radon, and no,
You guys are probably no stranger to. We'll get into a little bit of like the 101 basics that are, again, probably nothing that you haven't heard before, but it's always good to kind of hear it again. And then I guess I'll let these guys introduce themselves.
My name is Doug Webster. I'm the operations manager of Protect Environmental. And then this is Justin Bush, which
Hello.
is my project coordinator.
And
Right.
Doug's got how many years at Protect now?
17 years of experience. So I was around when they originally started.
You look 17 though, right?
I wish.
But he's been doing it since birth. No, thank you guys. We're not used to having all the tech, so we really appreciate this. So what is radon? Super basic. Like I said, you guys may know, it's a radioactive material that naturally occurs in the gas form, and it's invisible to the eye. There's no way you can smell it, taste it. It is the leading cause of lung cancer among non-smokers, and more than 21,000 people die of radon-induced lung cancer each year. And that was from the Surgeon General back in 2005. I always like to point that out because it's been quite some time since 2005, and that really hasn't been updated. So we would predict that that number is actually higher. But if you do the math, radon is responsible for a death every 25 minutes in the United States, which is incredible to put that in perspective. So very, very serious. Who can be affected by radon? So anyone with lungs, basically, if you're breathing, you have the potential to breathe in those radioactive particles that damage the lungs. Big for me, I'm a mom. children are actually more susceptible to toxic levels of radon. There's all kinds of statistics out there and all kinds of studies. But it's because of their increased breathing rate, their smaller lungs, they're breathing a lot faster. So if they're in an area that has high radon, their exposure level is just naturally going to be higher. And because children are spending more time on the ground, crawling around, before they crawl, you just lay them down. That's your source of contamination. So those concentration levels are way higher, lower to the ground. And then one thing for all the fur moms and dads out there, pets can't smoke. So if a pet has lung cancer, we can almost 100% attribute it to radon. Again, they're closer to the ground at those higher concentration levels. So why is radon so dangerous? Radon is decaying from radon is decaying from uranium underneath the ground. And it's when it gets breathed in that those particles actually damage the lung. Another thing in Kentucky that people talk about, we have a really, really high smoking rate, or we used to. It's coming down quite a bit. But those radioactive alpha particles from radon actually attach to other contaminants in the air. So, and feel free to jump in, guys. But like the secondhand smoke in the air is a particle. The radon alpha particle can attach to that dust or other contaminants as well. And then when that secondhand smoke gets breathed in, it actually has a better chance of doing damage, unfortunately. So there's been some studies and research out there that if you're in a home with secondhand smoke and you're getting radon exposure as well, it's up to 20 times greater than if you were just exposed to radon. That's potentially why Kentucky leads, very sadly, for lung cancer incident rates, leads the nation. So the damage is cumulative, and the longer you're exposed, the greater risk. So that's just long-term exposure. And then radon-induced lung cancer is completely asymptomatic, which is really dangerous because a lot of folks don't know that they've been exposed until they get a devastating diagnosis. And they're then shocked that I'm a non-smoker. I've never smoked. How do I have lung cancer? So those are really, really sad situations that these guys come in contact with a lot. It's actually really sad. I've spoken with lung cancer survivors that will go through cancer treatment, radiation, chemo. They come home breathing radioactive gas in their home, and no one has ever told them test for radon. And it's not till they've already completed treatment that they actually find out, hey, my home has increased levels of radon. So we're working to change it. So I'm a big visual person, so I just kind of want to throw this up. This actually shows how radon damages your lungs. So basically it's breathed in nose and mouth. That little star red thing is the alpha particle, which is a byproduct of, not to get super sciencey, but when that uranium decays, it kind of produces that. And it actually changes the DNA, just like a lot of other cancers. But that's the nitty gritty weeds of how that damage is happening. Love this graphic. This is just kind of put it in perspective. So the EPA's action level is 4.0 picocuries per liter. And if you're exposed to that level of radon, it's equal to 200 chest x-rays a year or smoking 8 cigarettes a day. So that's just at their action level. And as you can see, and we'll send this out so you guys can take a closer look at your leisure. But as those levels increase, you've got 8 picocuries at 400 chest x-rays a year. I mean, that's more than one a day, to put that in perspective. And then I always like to mention the World Health Organization recommends action at 2.7 picocuries, which is interesting. They recognize, the damage is happening at any level. So the lower that you can get those levels, the more protected that your residents and your sales are going to be. So that's that. So how do I know if my home has elevated radon levels? So testing is literally the only way to know. Because again, you can't see it, smell it, taste it. There's no odor. So you just kind of have to test. And feel free to jump in on this. So it's really important to have closed home conditions. And do you guys want to talk a little bit about what that exactly means?
So mainly it's because that if the windows or doors are open, then you won't get an accurate reading from your radon test, and or it can spike the levels too. So depending on how the doors are opened or the windows, it can increase levels or it can lower the levels. So then you wouldn't have an accurate reading and on the test. Yes, yes. So it will actually spike the levels up whenever you have rain, cold weather, but then you have the thermal sag effect. So the heat in the house pressurizes the home, creating a vacuum essentially and pulling the radon in. Is how that works. But yeah, rain and wind are big factors as well. Because the gas will escape around the house naturally if it's dry outside. If it doesn't have a chance to do that, then all the radon just pushes back into the home because it'll come through crawl spaces, cracks, sump pumps, anything like that that's not sealed. So if there's any kind of opening in the slab, it'll just force its way in.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean like you have to like vacate the room, the house, and don't open any doors. It
Yeah,
just
normal
means-
living condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tests should also be conducted by trained, certified, and licensed professionals. That's these guys. But that is actually a law in Kentucky. I mean, you don't want your neighbor kid dealing with radioactive material. And then we always like to mention every home can have different levels, and I'm sure that you guys have encountered this. You know, one house has high levels, and then the neighbors are completely fine. So it is an environmental contaminant. So there's all kinds of factors that can go into play there. Like Doug was saying, it's just the construction of it. If there's construction, like maybe they're blasting some rock in a different area, that can also cause your levels to change from year to year because it's changing the pathways that that gas is using to enter your home. Sorry, my big hands talker. Where and how does radon enter homes and buildings? So we kind of touched a little bit on this. To have elevated levels of radon, you have to have a source, and that source is uranium. So like same thing they make bombs out of. It's underground, naturally occurring, and when it decays just naturally, it produces the gas radon, and that gas finds this pathway of least resistance. And unfortunately, sometimes that's in our homes. Like Doug was saying, the stack effect. So that's like the negative and positive pressure inside your homes that's naturally occurring also can suck radon in. Just like we breathe, buildings breathe as well. And then like Doug was saying, radon enters through gaps and cracks in concrete walls, foundations, plumbing penetrations, those sub pumps, crawl spaces. There's all kinds of different places where it can unfortunately make its way in. So this is just a cool little graphic. I'm, again, a super visual person, but it shows some of the different areas where radon can enter. So we've got the sub pump here, cracks in foundations in the wall. Sometimes these can be really small. Radon in water and well water. That's not super big in Kentucky, but it is something to kind of be aware of if you've got a house on a well and maybe we're testing. Yeah, anything else you guys want to point out on that graphic?
No, I mean, that's.
I mean, I can expand a little bit more on just some of this, and I might be jumping ahead just a little bit, but I know that pathways of least resistance, especially here in Kentucky, not only when it gets to the home, but one of the main reasons why, or amongst many, that Kentucky is so high in general is a lot of our cave systems. It finds its path through the caves, it gets closer to the exit point of the soil, and it gets right up into the home. Limestone has a part to play in that as well. So there are a lot of factors that beneath our soil that cause the radon levels to increase quite a bit. And to touch base on the well water, We do have it where there is some that is in the well. Whenever it's coming out of the faucets in the shower, it's just pouring out there. So whenever somebody turns the water on with well water or some other source other than, you know, major city water, then a lot of radon can enter that way as well. Not to go, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but here in Lexington, we do see on average that there is a little bit more elevated levels than we do have in the Louisville area as well. Something with the karst and the way that the land and everything. We actually did a house at the beginning of this year whose levels were at 105. So it's pretty elevated out here. On average, I would say Louisville has an average of about 7 picocuries per liter. You can at least double that out here in the Lexington area. Most of the homes that we do test, they do come back elevated. There have been on some occasions where there are some homes that don't have much elevation, but back to the testing portion, we do follow the NRPP standards and EPA standards whenever we do our testing. So a lot of your all's transactions are a lot of times in the warmer months, summertime and everything, where a lot of home sales and home purchases are being made. That's oftentimes whenever you're going to see the lower levels of radon within a home as well. So let's just say you're testing in July and you're having levels of 3.8. That could be that by the time you get to December, they're probably having levels double that, maybe closer to 7.9, 8.2, something along those lines. The shifts in barometric pressure, all the weather conditions, it all has an effect on there. And that's why the EPA does recommend whenever you're testing, test in different seasons. So if you bought a home and purchased it in July, if you want to wait a year or two, like they do recommend about every 2 years retesting, even with the mitigation system in place. But if your numbers come back below that EPA action level of a 4 in July, maybe retesting sometime in the winter. The shifts in barometric pressure, all those weather conditions, the wet conditions and things like that, it all has an effect on the levels of radon. So you can sometimes sense that pressure within a home, almost like you're going and opening the door and it wants to fly out of your hand. That's that counteractive pressure on the outside of the home interacting with the pressure on the inside of the home. That has, you can kind of feel that effect. So that's kind of an example that we like to use whenever there's different pressures against the outside versus inside, more of like a visual in a sense. But yeah, a lot of it has to do with all that pressure. But I'm pretty sure there's another slide that we're going to touch base a little bit more on that on, but I will let us continue.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, full transparency. I switched this whole presentation on them, so we're kind of going through a little bit more detail than we have in the past. So apologize, you guys are already.
But these are common misnomers, and you guys will have insight
On this too, so please jump in. We've heard it all. If I haven't heard of radon, it can't be dangerous. I'm sure you guys have heard that too. This is my favorite. If it's naturally occurring, there's nothing to worry about. Well, a rattlesnake is naturally occurring too, but you don't want that in your house. Homes without basements and new homes don't have radon problems. That's actually, I literally hear that every time I say radon, and I'm sure you guys do too. Do you want to talk
Every
about
time.
like why that's not the case?
It's because it makes contact to the ground. So any home that makes some sort of contact to the ground, you're going to have a radon problem. So houses, yes, on slab, because it's not surrounded by earth all the way around like a basement is, will possibly have lower levels, but there's no way to know unless you test it. So you got to test it to verify, because like I said, any contact to the ground will still have a radon issue.
And then new homes too. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, I have a new home, it's only a problem for older homes. The newer homes are actually built with more energy efficiency in mind. So you're trapping that envelope in. So that's trapping all types of contaminants in the indoor air. And there's all kinds of new research coming out that indoor air is like up to 10 times greater the pollution than outdoor air, which is kind of horrific. But again, like using energy efficient doors and windows, totally recommend that. But also without that draft that you get in those older homes, the concentrations of radon are allowed to build up at greater levels. And then I'm sure you guys have heard this one too. I've lived in my home for a long time, so it doesn't matter now. Well, the newer people that are buying homes are a little bit more health conscious, and they may be asking about that as part of this sale. So it may just, you know, if you do have someone that says something like that, it may be a way to protect the sale. So go ahead and get out in front of it before you get those uncomfortable questions at the closing table, you know. All right, so this is my favorite thing. This is our radon risk search tool, and we're gonna see, hooray. So basically, does anybody want to share their zip code or a zip code that you maybe have a sale pending in, or?
404. Always got Camp Elsa limestone.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I type that right? 40. Yeah.
So I was like, I know that's in here. Okay, are we in Garrett County? Okay, perfect. So sometimes occasionally, if a zip code is in double counties, you just have to select it through the drop down, which in this case, we're in the right county. So this is so cool to me because it takes the CDC testing results and puts them into like a search widget and then it applies easily to understand like impact data. So based on known testing results, we know that the average radon level in that zip code is 5.9 picocuries per liter, which is, we know, above the 4.0 threshold. And then 40%, up to 40% of the buildings that were tested above that action level. So then it goes down and it kind of gives you a little bit more context. So almost 60 picocuries is the highest radon level found in that area. And exposure to that 5.9 average level is greater than a chest x-ray every day, or smoking 12 cigarettes per day. So if you have someone radon's like an abstract thing, it's hard to understand. So this really like puts it in perspective and makes it something tangible that people can really understand. And we'll circulate this link so you guys can use it. And we actually have some cards to brush off the rest. All right, so this is a little bit, and Justin kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's great information.
So right now, Kentucky, it's a private smart case
System and the limestone. And elevated levels have been found in every county in the state. So nationwide, about 7% of homes contain elevated levels. Again, that's based on some data. I would imagine that's actually higher in reality, but 42% of Kentucky homes have elevated risk. And again, being in Lexington, we know just from our testing, that's actually a little bit higher. So up to 65% of homes in some parts of Kentucky, based on the CDC data, are above 4.0 picocuries. And then Kentucky leads our nation in lung cancer death rates and incident rates. And again, I kind of spoke about the synergies between smoking and why that is. And it's super unfortunate, and it's not something that we want to be on the top of the list for. And, you know, there is a lot more research coming out and being done now to kind of dig deeper into why that is. So you may have seen this before. This is, again, I always point out this data is at least a decade old. So it's a little bit dated, more than I would like it to be, but it shows the kind of hotspots based on actual tests that have been conducted in all the counties. So it's kind of cool. It's the data that we have. So we'll take a look at it. And again, we can circulate that so that's a little bit, you all can go through it. And then I apologize, I've got some Indiana counties on this chart. But based on all that CDC data that we have, we broke it down to get the average per counties. And we just wanted to highlight some of the top counties for you guys. So I don't know if you guys are doing business in Bullitt County. We had some super high levels, Hardin County, Henry County, Jefferson County, all as well, Shelby, Oldham, Spencer County. all of these counties have an average of radon that's above the EPA action level. And then again, this chart breaks it down to something a little bit more tangible that people can understand how that radiation is affecting them. So, it could be up to 1 or 2 x-rays, chest x-rays a day is the dose equivalent if you're in a building that contains that level of radon. So this is our Kentucky, so the industry association put these report cards together. And these are really cool just to kind of give you a snapshot of what's going on in Kentucky. So up to 20% of the lung cancer cases in our state are actually attributed to radon exposure, which is 1 in 5. And that's unfortunate, but that's where we're at on that. And this costs our state, our taxpayers, a ton of money in Medicare, Medicaid, because unfortunately, long-term exposure, people are not realizing that their symptoms are caused by radon because it's asymptomatic. You can't see it, smell it, taste it. So a lot of times people don't get a diagnosis until they're 70. So there's a lot more to go in there, but I also like this pie chart. It shows that 44% of the buildings statewide tested above the EPA action level, which if you think about that, it's like, okay, you sell 10 homes, 4 of them may have a toxic level of radon. And we know this area in particular is a little bit trending higher than that. We'll go into the laws in a couple other slides, but just wanted to point out that chart on the bottom section shows the different protections that are in place via state statute. And there's all kinds of cool stuff on there, but that's a highlight. So the radon contractor law basically states that anybody who's doing measurement, mitigation, or laboratory analysis in the state of Kentucky has to be certified and use the ANSI standards. So you can trust these guys, they're certified. But anybody else, like if you've got, somebody at the other side of the deal that's using somebody who's not certified, that's definitely something important, and it's by law. You have to do it. And I mean, there is a committee of 9 people that said, actually this is dated. They're actually part of the public protection cabinet now. It was the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, but that has been moved to public protection. So there's an oversight committee that makes sure that these are being followed. And if you ever have any scenarios where you think that it's not being followed, please report it to them. Because it's really important. Again, you don't want people who are not following standards dealing with radioactive material. And then there's also a list of contractors available. If you're not sure if your seller has used somebody who's certified, you can always check them. And then I'm sure you guys have encountered this. There's the radon warning statement on the seller's disclosure of property conditions. Simple 2 questions. And that's a great opportunity for conversation and a way to make sure that everybody's protected in the sale. So risk and liability management. So rely on your experts, these guys. They're certified, they're licensed, and they do testing and mitigation. Equip yourself and your clients with information about radon. Develop potentially an office policy, maybe you guys already have one, for dealing with radon to make sure that everybody's buttoned up, that sale is 100% protected. And beware of interfering with people who are tampering with the measurement devices and the mitigation. Protect yourself and your client by providing reliable and accurate information. That's why we're here. So you don't have to be the expert. These guys will pass around some contact information, and they're here. We're all super passionate about it. And if you just have any question, there's no dumb question. Please call us and we'll help you out. We like to kind of quote this because we think it's super powerful, from Ralph Hallman of the Associate General Counsel and National Association of Realtors. And he was quoted saying, handling radon properly may enhance the real estate sale rather than be a deal killer, which I believe is true. So your role in ensuring a valid measurement. I'm gonna let you guys take care of this one and we kind of covered this a little bit.
Yeah, so advising the seller or contractor a minimum of 12 hours prior of closed home conditions. So whenever a test is placed, we want to make sure that there's not a whole bunch of contractors coming in, painting being done, because a lot of times they'll open the windows and stuff like that. So if that's the case, we'll make sure that we would test after that process. Just because, like I said before, it could spike the levels or it could lower the levels, not giving us an accurate reading. And then, so yeah, don't schedule the test during a move in, move out. So same thing that follows that. So if you've got movers coming in, they're going to leave the doors open, so it's just going to void the test data. Ensure the sellers to sign a um, I, I don't know if that's practiced too often. So, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily necessary at least. Use a licensed contractor for radon measurement. Yes, you want a licensed person because there's so many protocols that come to testing that a lot of people don't follow. So like if you've got, let's say if you got a house that has slab on grade, basement, and crawl space, those can all three be emanation sources of radon. So you would want to test all three locations. So you would test the basement, above the slab, and the room above the crawl space, because a crawl space is a non-livable space. So those all three would need to be tested because two out of the three could be a problem, and you can verify that by doing the testing. So it's always good to know.
There is a lot of retesting that we've had to do for real estate transactions just because of this point. A lot of times there are home inspectors that utilize their own testing device and things of that nature, or use a third party that they usually rely upon. I think it just happened last week where there was 3 different crawl spaces and 1 basement. They only left 1 test behind. So we had to come back out and test above every single crawl space, test in the basement because there was elevated levels, but it didn't narrow down where where the emanation was truly coming from. Because if you don't, number one, if you don't test above every area, you could be missing one, but also that kind of helps narrow down where a lot of that source is coming from. It could be coming from more from above the crawl space over in the area above a master bedroom rather than down in a basement area. Most of the time, it always follows the path of least resistance. So lowest point of entry is vast majority going to be the basement if there is a basement. Then that even if we take care of the basement, that doesn't mean that there's still not emanation coming in from a crawl space area. But that's why you always test, and even after we install the radon mitigation system, we still test above each and every single one of those areas to ensure that we've taken care of the radon issue. Vast majority of the time, taking care of that lowest point of entry does take care of it, but there is a once in a blue moon situation where there are multiple points where radon is coming in.
Yeah, and you can normally see that if the levels are extremely elevated. So if they're on the lower side, so let's say if you have a test that's around like a 4 or an 8, chances are it's going to be the basement. Now, if you're seeing 20 and above, 15 and above, chances are that you have multiple emanation sources. So that's why you always want to make sure that you're testing every location, because it's basically a verification, essentially, because it's tasteless, sightless, there's no scent, so there's no way to know without verifying with a test.
The other one, we talk about this all the time, the monitoring and testing those levels every 2,000 square feet.
Yeah, so you would want to use, so any house that has 2,000 square feet or above, you want to do 2 tests on the foundation, because with it being such a larger slab, you can have one side of the house that actually has the emanation source coming through. And let's say if you put the radon system on the far right side, but the left side is where the problem is, then there's a good chance that it might not get all the radon out. So it's good to kind of narrow it down basically and say, hey, testing was a little higher over here. We may want to put the system on this side of the house. So that's why it's always good to know with a house that's a little bit bigger in square footage, just on the basement. The whole house doesn't matter. It's just basement that we're worried about. and then encourage retesting. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Measurements to ensure a valid test.
Do you all provide an email or a handout or something for the seller? For the buyer to provide to the seller's agent or provide to the seller so that they know that this is what they need to avoid doing? How's this communicated? We know as we're representing the buyer who's having the test, but the seller is the one who's in charge of the property and has the responsibility to do this. So how do we get that information to the seller? Do y'all provide an email that we can forward? Do you have a handout, a flyer, something that is?
I think that's a great idea.
That would actually be a good idea, but no, we don't have anything like that because it's usually the seller, if the seller wants to do whatever they want to do, that's usually the case. Unless the buyer says, hey, I want to use these people because they're certified and,
Yeah.
So, but yes, that actually is a really good idea.
That's a great idea.
What we generally do is, because this is part of the NRPP standards for testing. So we pretty much follow that. If anybody needs any information regarding that. Generally, in the past, whoever's doing it should be certified, so they should know the NRPP and EPA standards whenever it comes to testing. But if somebody does want to know if they're like testing on their own, or if we have a lot of people that have like their own AirThings device they purchase off of Amazon or Lowe's or Home Depot, or even a charcoal test. Whenever they get the charcoal test device, that generally has those instructions on there. Whenever we place them, if they want this information, then we can just draw this out of the standards and send that information to them. But most of the time, that this part isn't fully communicated just because they're not the ones handling this. We're the ones coming out and setting it up, but if they're doing a device on their own like that, at home charcoal test, they purchase on their own, those instructions are usually in there. But we have, isn't really something that we have done, but it's definitely something that we could do. Pull those standards out from the NRPP and then get those sent out.
I think that would be really helpful. I know there's some companies that leave a little sign out that says, don't open your windows, testing in progress, or whatever it might be.
Because if we don't normally get, so originally, like normally, someone calls and says, hey, we had a radon problem, we need mitigation. It's usually because the home inspector normally always does the test, so we always find out at the end.
Yeah.
Whenever we do testing mainly, it's for already the homeowner that's purchased the home. So usually whenever it comes up, it's from the home inspector. So.
Along that line, can you do testing while for the buyer's benefit as a part of a condition of sale?
Okay, yes.
Okay, and what type of equipment do you use? Is it like a plug-in electric?
Yes, CRN device.
Okay.
So a continuous radar monitor. And it sends out, so like whenever we come back to collect it, we're able to send out a full report.
That's really preferred over like a charcoal or even a liquid simulation test, because those CRMs are continuous radar monitoring, so it's taking measurements every hour. And so you get a greater depth of data to better diagnose the solution.
Which the charcoal tests, they work really well. We actually recommend those two just because the way that they work. And it's nice too, because if the customer can set that up, they're getting their own test data. So that it's not kind of like a conflict of interest thing too. So I know a lot of people ask that question. Like, hey, you guys do the install and the testing with that. It's like, yes, we can't alter our devices anyway, but it's nice that if somebody wants that option, they can set the test themselves and verify their level based off of that test device. But it's something that gets mailed in, and a lab actually analyzes it and gets the data that way.
And those are fairly inexpensive, $20.
And with these, in regards to communication with the customers, whenever we go to set a test, we communicate this directly with the customers, face to face or either on the phone. So all these standards that we need to make sure to keep doors closed, or there's, normal living conditions and things of that nature. So it's not really the input or anything that we leave out, but we do have that direct communication with the customer to ensure that they are following, what's needed to have this test performed and, this specifically following these standards. So it is communicated to them, But generally, whenever we are doing testing, there is some form of communication that is being had for the standards that have to test them.
I think it's a great idea to like have something else though, the non-interference agreement is, you know, example of that, where someone's not gonna be tampering with the devices and they're agreeing to that to protect the future buyer, so I think that that could easily be worked into one thing. We could talk to all the track, that would be helpful.
I think the reality of this situation though is that you're kind of casting upstream with us as agents because we're representing buyers 90% of the time when we're having radon test. Unless it's a relocation property or something where they mandate that that testing be done and they generally take care of all that anyway. But from an agent standpoint, we're representing a potential buyer who's got a concern about the quality of the air in the home, and they want to have testing done. So we're kind of arranging for that. We're going into not saying hostile, but it might be a seller situation that, you know, they don't want to spend any more money to do radon mitigation or anything else. And the likelihood of them doing some of these tests is much greater if it's not some sort of disclosure or some sort of, I appreciate the one-on-one interface, but, you know, just some sort of documentation or advertising. Well, may I ask what the cost of the test would be, or is that a fair question?
Yeah,
Normally it's $150.
Okay.
So we come out, pick it up, so set it up, sits for 48 hours, and we come back, pick it up, and then download the data. Yeah, so normally $150.
Okay, and action is required in Kentucky if it's 4.0 or higher?
Yes.
Yes.
But like we're saying, so the health organization, they say at 2.7, you should take action as well, but for the United States, they have a 4.0. I think the 2.7 is a good mark because if that does come back, like we were saying, like seasonal, if it does come back at 2.7 in June, there's a good chance that it'll be a 4 or greater during the winter time. A lot of people are in their homes around that time mainly. So it's always good that even still, if they get, a lot of people are like, yes, you know, I got a 3.8, we're good. No, the lower levels you can get it is the best. So I would still recommend testing. A lot of times, we get a lot of people. I had a guy the other day that had a 1.6. He still wanted it out.
Right.
So we did a system for him, but it's all based on how people feel about it. Because, like I said, there is no safe level. The lowest possible rating you can get is the best. So, but yes, EPA action levels at a 4. But I usually recommend anything that's at a 2.0. or greater, I would suggest either do retesting or just go ahead and mitigate.
yeah, I can definitely understand where you guys are coming from though, being representing the buyer. Cause I mean, I was a buyer and I got burned by this before I worked here. And I didn't even know how bad I got burned, because my realtor, he just didn't know and did not advocate properly. So I really appreciate those questions, and we'll see what we can come up with after this too, to kind of strengthen that.
Oh, sorry, I've got another question there. This is just me. On the qualifications, what should we look for as an agent when we've got a home inspector that's doing a radon service as well? What kind of qualifications, what do we need to look for as far as licensing or?
Radon measurement. So they have a radon measurement certification.
Which is?
It's for testing.
Okay.
Yeah. Through the NRPP. So you could actually look that up. So you go to the NRPP and you look up his name, and it'll pull up if he has a certification or not. Same thing with the testing device as well. So these tests that we have, they need to be recalibrated every year. So they go through a recalibration every single year through us. We had an incident in Cynthiana, Kentucky, where a gentleman was outside of all of his certifications. Same thing with the testing data, and he got burned pretty bad on that, and so did the sellers. The sellers had to pay twice for rent since nothing was done properly. So it's good to check the testing device, because they will put on a sticker that has a recalibration date then too, because these tests are so sensitive. If they're not recalibrated right, it could be high or it could be low. So you never know what exactly the levels are.
Has a sticker on that.
There's a sticker on the sticker. Yes.
So even with some of those at home tests that we can buy on Amazon, even arrogance, it's something that we kind of test the efficacy of the, it's something that we would trust, but that's not a device that would suffice for proper test measurement.
Just homeowner, you're allowed to have those to verify, but if you want to do a transaction, they'll ask you to be a certain.
And those are never sent back for recalibration or anything, actually, it's pretty much just a reset button and start over, but it doesn't do anything with the pieces that are inside that actually detect the radon. So eventually, those things are going to be accurate. It's good to have for homeowners to see, continuously for themselves for their own peace of mind. But generally, those aren't anything that would, be able to be utilized for an actual certified test.
Great question. We heard earlier today that multiple offers are coming back and demand is going like crazy. And, I hope we don't get back to the way it was before, where people were waiving home inspections and other craziness. If we have that kind of situation to where you have a seller says, no, I'm not doing mitigation, you take the house or not, type scenario, is there some kind of a ballpark estimate we can look at, like for a typical ranch, as far as mitigation costs, what a buyer could look for in the future?
Yeah, so our standard system is a house that is at least in the 80s. The chances are we have gravel underneath it, and the basic slab is under 1,600 square feet. Our smallest span that we carry is capable of taking care of a situation like that. So the ballpark range would be between 15 and 16. Something like that. Yeah. And anything greater, so like if you have a house that's, we usually recommend anything above that 600 square feet, then we have like a high value system. It's capable of taking care of 2,000 square feet. Or 30 square feet. But so and then when you start getting the older home play, those fans, they have a little muscle. So it just varies based on age, size.
Respect.
Yes.
Those are going to be the two main factors of determining the type of fan that utilized. Is going to be the age of the home and the square footage of that foundation. Vast majority of the time, well, every single install, what we do is we run diagnostics for airflow underneath. So oftentimes what we like to do with our estimates is we like to start out in the worst case scenario, be able to work our way down where we grow out a little bit. And by the time we get out there, it's our people are the kids about plants are already there. And then they say, well, looks like we're gonna act about your type of thing. So we'd rather start out at worst case and work our way down. So with our diagnostics, what we do is we go on and pour into the foundation, sit back and tester onto that. The furthest corners away from the test, but pressure load tension testing, make sure that we're getting proper airflow to all four corners of that foundation. Not only does that help us determine the airflow, this will work, but it also helps to determine the most appropriate type of thing. We're always about trying to save people money, but that's why I think it just happened on Friday. We had a guy who had sent out that higher pressure fan estimate. We were able to knock that down to standard because even though it was a corporate built home, there was still plenty of airflow that we were reaching all for the corners. So we were able to drop that down from it's our right on the way Pro Series Chance 5.8 fan to our heartbeat on 45 same. So we prefer to do that, be more upfront on it so that the customers feel a lot more trust and comfort.
That diagnostic that they're talking about where they're pressure testing corners, a lot of companies don't do that. So it's something that we always like to talk about. It provides better data, it provides better peace of mind, it provides better
Price and product for the customer, essentially.
Yeah, because I mean, for an example, if you had an older home, and let's say that if another company came in, put a run-out system in, and then, said, hey, run-out's good, put the system in, we're out of here, here's a test. If the test comes back high, it could be because, I was the wrong fan. Or if it was the right fan, it really pulling enough airflow. That means that source, on the other side of the house, and that airflow is reaching. So if we use a diagnostic test and verify that the suction is reaching the right side, we know right then there, hey, Mr. Johnson, airflow is not reaching here, how do you want to proceed? Let's either say, book the system, or what can we do to reach that other half? So what we would do is add another hole that gets closer to the center to where we can pick up that other half that we're not reaching. So that's where the diagnostic really comes in. Because we don't know where the radome's coming from, this way we can determine that the airflow is reaching all the way out. Well, we can verify and guarantee that we are getting the radon out. So that's, we do that with every single home. That's first step. So we verify everything right then and there so that, you know, we can move forward with the system properly.
So we're gonna try and power through, but this is just, again, we can send this around, but this is just kind of the method and the budget. He already spoke to that. Oh, really quick, do y'all want to talk about crawl spaces?
Yeah.
So crawl spaces is going to be a little bit different, because you're not really going to have a place where you can dig a suction pit into a crawl space. It's just going to be open soil or gravel over the top or whatever it may be. With crawl spaces, it's a different process, but you still add a radon mitigation system to it. It would require encapsulation, and with the encapsulation, we're gonna use, 10 or 12 mil vapor barrier on the floor. We're gonna wrap around the columns to ensure that there's no air from the radon system leaking out from underneath that vapor barrier. And then we're also gonna mechanically fasten everything to the wall. So a lot of problems that we've seen with some other crawl space encapsulations is they'll either silicone that up or they'll spray foam it, and then over time, if they're walking down there, crawling around, if they have to do anything, that's going to end up coming off. So what we do is we actually mechanically fasten everything to the wall so that it's tight, sealed, and secure. And then we run perforated pipe that's going to be underneath of that vapor barrier, and then attach the radon mitigation system to that. And then that is going to start drawing everything out from underneath of that vapor barrier in the crawl space and up and out, just like a standard mitigation system. Sometimes, so even if it's just encapsulated, it's always going to find a path to come up and out. Oftentimes, especially from, block wall, a lot of crawl spaces have block wall. Some of them are going to have concrete. It's still going to find a way to get up and out and into the atmosphere and oftentimes into the home. So crawl spaces are a little bit more, and it's all going to be based off of square footage and size and everything of that nature. Just because there's a lot more material involved, there's a lot more labor involved. So those are a little bit more detailed. We don't necessarily have a standard set price for crawl spaces because there's so many different variables that go into that. But we're kind of flooded with crawl spaces right now with how many we're doing. And it is a little bit of a process. In general, it takes multiple days with crew just to get those done, because we want to make sure that once it's in, nothing really has to be repaired or anything down the road. Half of the jobs that we do on a day-to-day basis are repairs from other mitigation systems. So I think there was one in Cynthiana that we did where they didn't mechanically fasten anything to the wall. It was for a real estate transaction. It was just a vapor barrier laid down, and they stuck a radon mitigation system to it, just hoping that it would draw everything out. Well, we ended up having to come back, do the walls for the encapsulation, attach that to what was already there, and then reroute the mitigation system as well, because they went through a vent and kind of blocked their access to proper ventilation for that crawl space as well. So a number of factors that do go into the crawl space, but it's really just based off of size on that one.
But yeah, if you're representing a buyer who has a crawl space and the sellers are like, I'm not fixing it, just want to be prepared for that higher price tag. And I mean, these guys will come out and do estimates and stuff if that's a factor.
Yeah, generally for crawl spaces, because we want to get an exact measurement, we'll always come out and, well, in most cases, either one of the two of us will always come out and meet with the customer, whether it's for a crawl space or whether we're doing a mitigation, not only because we want to ensure that we get a good layout of what the house is like, but we discuss the aesthetics as well. It's PVC pipe. It's not the prettiest thing to see. So we always want to ensure that the routing of what we're planning on doing is going to be something that the customer is going to be comfortable with as well. Real estate transactions, slightly a little bit trickier, just because you might have a seller that's in the home And then the buyer might want to see it a different way. So we try and have that discussion as well. Go through, sometimes we've done it to where we're going to FaceTime them and say, this is where we're planning on routing this out, just to ensure that by the time they do get into the home and they see that radon mitigation system, they're not completely appalled by it. So,
We've got some great pictures for that. Hang tight on that one.
It needs to go to the top though, yes.
so wherever it's exiting the home, it's got to be a certain amount of feet away and above from any windows or any open access back into the home, because barometric pressure and high winds can push that right back in. So there are certain standards that do have to be followed in regards to the NRPP. But most of the time, wherever you exit the home, and it goes around either that gutter or that eave about 6 inches above that. We do interior systems as well, but that's a different option that is a little bit more costly, but visibility from the outside of the home, you're only going to see about a foot of vent pipe just sticking out of the roof.
So really quick, we'll just go through these obligatory slides. Cannot speak today. Just basically who we are. So we're a national radon and mitigation provider. We have, we're based across the US. And we do have a lot of experience in time sensitive real estate transactions. And again, we're really focused on transparency and consistency and this partnership. Here's a quick map of some of the radon across the US. We've showed Kentucky, we talked about that, so I'm gonna kind of power through. And I appreciate your all's time, but we wanted to go ahead and get this stuff hammered out. So we have some leave behinds that I'll share with Mary, and she can kind of circulate those. But those have a couple, I'm just gonna go through these animations. Those have a couple of different options on how you guys can contact these guys. And when we built out the system, we wanted to prioritize those real estate transactions and those inquiries that are coming in, because we understand y'all are on tight turnarounds, and really that's part of the game. So again, our system is completely designed to prioritize those inquiries. And we don't play games with pricing. We've got the standard pricing. We kind of shared that earlier, and some of the factors that go into that. Doug's cell phone is actually on the handout that we'll circulate. So, I mean, you got a direct line to the man right here. And so we'll make sure that gets around. And then we're again upfront with everybody. And we really value clear communication with agents, clients, whoever's in the deal. And let's see. Okay. So here's what we need to know. So we're kind of offering like a base $50 off a base mitigation for anybody involved in your all's transaction. So that could be the buyer or the seller. And again, we'll circulate those little leave behinds.
It's not just the base mitigation, it's all mitigation.
Sorry.
Yeah, so whatever type of system, that's $50 off.
$50 off. Again, we're not playing games. We're not marking it up $50 to take off $50. It is what it is. It's printed on the actual handout. So it's no games. Again, we're going to work with you guys to get those things turned around as quickly as possible so we can meet those closing deadlines. And we try to make it easy. So if we circulate these materials and like this gentleman pointed out, like, hey, it'd be great to have this information, let us know and we will work to get something that better fits your all's use case. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I wanted to show, real quick. So we've got a QR code, a dedicated landing page. We'll circulate the link there. We've got an online form fill thing that goes straight to these guys. And again, in our workflow and our backend operation systems, these deals are always going to be prioritized versus some other, just the homeowner that doesn't maybe have a super time sensitive situation going on. All right, so we love these and we'll go through these really quick, but this is our wall of shame. Doug, I don't know.
So this here, a lot of radon companies will use, it's called Schedule 20 pipe. It's a thin wall pipe. It's very cheap. I think it's like $1 a stick of pipe, but these are not required, or it's not up to code because They're extremely fragile, especially in the winter like this. And the bond, so the glue and bond will break apart here. So if you've got a house where you have an opening like this, well, if you're cutting grass or the kids are playing around the side yard, you've got radon just leaking out of the pipe basically. And so if the house, let's say if the house is, normally at like a, 5.0 picocurie, well, you've got 10 times the amount coming out of that pipe because the fan is just amplifying that radon basically. So this here, if you ever see Schedule 20, it's a no-no just because it's so fragile, it breaks.
It's a material cost savings. thing that
Exactly.
A lot of other companies will utilize, because there is quite a bit of price difference between Schedule 20 pipe and Schedule 40.
Yeah, and so like this right here, so here's another one where you were saying before, like how high does the pipe go? It should go all the way to the top, but the only problem is that this here is venting right next to that vent. So you want that to go to the high point if that's the case. So this should vent above that roof line, at least 2 feet above that vent. Same thing with the windows, needs to be 10 feet away or 2 feet above because it could possibly have reentry. Same thing here. So a lot of these probably you guys normally see every single day. So a lot of people just stop that pipe right there in the soffit and then just put 90 on there. Well, most houses have a soffit vent that kind of helps relieve some of the pressure of the so the radon will circulate back into the home, and also they've got a nice little mold stain, on the side of their house now. But yeah, so that's to recirculate back into the home if it's right there at the soffit. So you want to make sure that pipe actually comes out of the 90 and then goes above the shingles there, so that it's blowing up.
Yeah, just about 6 inches above that shingle, right where it makes that 90-degree turn.
And then same thing with this one, and I don't know if this is, I can't really remember, but we did case studies, and this may be the house that I'm thinking of. Well, this house here, because it wasn't vented properly, I believe the daughter's bedroom here had picocuries of a level of 100 and something. And so they were just pumping right on back into the daughter's room. So that's why it's extremely important to vent it above the roof line there. So you just test the second level. Yeah.
So stuff to watch out for.
This one here, that's my favorite one there. So whenever the kids are outside playing, they can cool off with the, the cool air that comes out of the radon pipe there, so I mean, just examples of things that you can't do that because it'll just continuously create a radon problem for you because it's right there next to that window, it's back in the window. And like I said, if you're out there playing, first thing you're going to do is put your face against something that's blowing air out, it's a kid. So exactly. Correct. And then the fact that the home inspector didn't catch that as well, is concerning too.
The lack of information, so.
Stuff like this, you can't use ductwork to vent it out. Like I said, that's just a cheap and efficient way to get it out. And then what's going to happen is over time, so the fan is sitting horizontally, that's going to build up water. They're not built to sit horizontally. They're supposed to be upright to channel water through it or moisture, whatever. So this here, I mean, that's going to create a problem for them no matter what. It's just going to come out when the fan dies out, or if something just fails on there because it's going to build up water in it, basically. And that looks like that's it. Does anybody have any questions about anything?
Appreciate all your attention. Cool. Well, we got some goodies. We got some chip clips and some pens if you all would like.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you guys so much.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And any questions you all have, feel free to give us a call.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome to hear from some true professionals because we see a lot of things that maybe aren't so professional.
We see it.
Just lack of information, Sure.
It's a little bit different, parents are talking. But it will have. It started here and it's kind of expanded a little bit. You go to a place like New Jersey.
Yeah.
Fully regulated.
Yeah.
They're gonna have almost everybody, if there's different laws are in place for real estate transactions.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the community itself, they know a lot more about regulation. But yeah, we're one of the highest states that the elevated levels. The regulation here, there are people following the standards and making sure that licenses are up to date.
Yeah.
It's just not as existent.
It's not, it's subpar, yes, yeah. I know I've always lived in an area where, so I was in the 451, it's very high.
Yeah.
So we always have a system in there, and now in Jessamine, I sit on a solid sheet of limestone, so we've got one in our place, but it is, yeah. I mean, there's certain areas, I can see it far more than others. Sure, no, I already knew. Yeah, I already knew that was, when we built our house, my husband had it for 12 feet last time. Okay, so that's what we did that certificate foundation.